Cruising is one of the most popular forms of vacation in the world. In 2023, over 30 million people went on cruises, generating well over $20 billion in revenue for the cruise lines. Cruises are so attractive because they're all-in-one vacation packages. You can travel the world with lodging, food, and transportation all taken care of. Perhaps one of the most surprising things about cruises is the relatively low cost. In some cases, the cost can be as low as $33 per day. That's inclusive of unlimited food and a huge number of onboard amenities. Even a crappy motel is likely to cost you more than that. So how is this possible? Cruise ships cost hundreds of millions and in some cases even billions of dollars to build. They have massive cruise and fuel costs. Yet despite charging a lower price per night than most hotels, they're able to generate billions of dollars of profits. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the cruise line business and show how they can offer their guests so much for such cheap prices. The cheapest cruise deal I could find was this 12-night transatlantic cruise offered by Carnival for $399. This equates to about $33 per day. One-way transatlantic cruises are almost always the cheapest for reasons we'll discuss later. Also, this is for one of the undesirable interior rooms without a window. If Carnival only sold $33 tickets, they certainly would not make a profit. The average ticket on a Carnival cruise is $152 per night. We're using Carnival as an example, but most of the big cruise lines have similar pricing. Even at $152, it seems like the passengers are getting an extreme bargain. Not only do you get a room, but you also get unlimited food at a wide selection of onboard restaurants, access to multiple pools, free concerts and other forms of entertainment, zip lines, and water slides. Cruise ships are expensive. Obviously, the bigger the cruise ship, the more expensive it will be. As shipbuilding technology has advanced, cruise ships have tended to get bigger and more expensive over time. In January of 2024, Royal Caribbean launched its latest ship called Icon of the Seas. With a construction cost of $2 billion, it is the most expensive cruise ship ever built. With a maximum passenger capacity of 7,600, it's practically the size of a small city. Aside from the upfront investment, there are substantial costs associated with operating a cruise ship. Typically, there's one crew member for every 3 to 4 passengers. Most of the crew are involved in cleaning the rooms, cooking and serving meals, administering onboard activities, etc. These are jobs which require limited qualifications. There's a much smaller number of highly skilled technical staff who are responsible for sailing the ship safely. Because cruise ships are out at sea most of the time and make stops all over the world, the staff are generally not required to have work visas. For example, even if a cruise ship usually leaves and arrives at a port in Florida, the staff are technically not working in the United States and thus do not need immigration status. Because of this, the majority of crew members come from developing countries in Latin America and Southeast Asia. The single largest country is the Philippines, with an estimated 30% of global cruise ship staff being Filipino. The average salary is about $18,000 per year with room and board included. While this might not sound like a lot by American standards, it's more than double the median salary in the Philippines. Thus, cruise ships are able to hire a large number of highly motivated crew members at a relatively cheap cost. The next major expense is food. Large cruise ships can serve over 10,000 meals per day to both passengers and crew. They have massive kitchens which use assembly line methods to churn out finished food at an industrial scale. The final significant expense is fuel. A large cruise ship can easily consume 250 tons of diesel every single day. So how much does all of this cost? We'll use Carnival Cruise Lines as an example. We took their 2023 expenses and divided them by the number of passengers and average trip length to get the cost per passenger per day. The single largest expense at $37 is repairs, insurance, and onboard entertainment, maintaining the pools, water slides, etc. Given how large and complex a cruise ship is, it makes sense that the repairs and insurance are very expensive. Onboard expenses cost $26. This includes the cost of shore excursions as well as anything you buy on the ship. Payroll costs $26 and fuel costs $22. $17 goes to credit card processing fees they pay to dock the ship at ports, etc. $15 goes to food. $8 goes to various taxes and fees the cruise line has to pay to the countries the ship docks at. $3 goes to travel agents. For example, if you book a cruise via an online travel agency such as Expedia, they take a couple percent as a commission. All things considered, it costs Carnival $154 per day per passenger to operate a ship. One thing that stands out is that food only costs $15 per day. On land, you'd be lucky to find an all-you-can-eat buffet that costs $15 for just one meal. The cruise ship gives you 3 meals per day, all you can eat. In fact, if you want to eat more than 3 meals, you're more than welcome to help yourself. How can they provide such massive quantities of food at such a cheap cost? At a typical restaurant on land, the raw ingredients only cost about 30% of the price charged to consumers. Despite charging a 3 times markup over the cost of materials, margins in the restaurant industry are razor thin. Most of the restaurant's costs lie in salaries for the cooks. If the restaurant offers a wide variety of options, they need to make each meal individually. This is a labor-intensive process requiring a lot of cooks. Another major expense is rent. A restaurant isn't full all the time, so during the busy hours they need to generate enough profits to cover the rent. In a cruise ship, there are thousands of passengers who have no other option but to eat on the ship. Thus, the capacity utilization is much higher. The cruise ship makes standardized dishes on an industrial scale. These economies of scale allow for each cook to make far more meals than they would be able to make at a traditional restaurant, so the cost of the finished product isn't that much greater than the raw materials. With that being said, the daily operating cost of $154 per passenger is still slightly higher than the average ticket price of $152. And that's not even considering the massive upfront investment of buying the ship in the first place. But ticket revenue is only one part of the equation. They have gift shops where you can buy gimmicky merchandise. But more importantly, when the ship is out at sea, it's not within the jurisdiction of any country. That means there is no sales tax or value-added tax. Most cruise ships have jewelry and other luxury shops. The shops are often operated by third parties, but because it's so lucrative, they pay the cruise lines huge amounts of rent. Similarly, they are not subject to any gambling laws. This allows them to operate onboard casinos. While unlimited food is included within the ticket price, alcohol must be purchased separately. The cruise ship charges a significant markup to what it would cost on land. If you want satellite internet, that's going to cost you another $20 to $30 per day. Finally, most people who go on cruises do so because they want to see the world. Cruise lines partner with local tourism companies to offer shore excursions, which can in some cases cost hundreds of dollars. Taking the example of Carnival, the average ticket price is $152 per day, but they also make $82 per day from non-ticket revenue. This brings the total up to $234. Subtract the $154 of operating costs and they make $80 of profit per passenger per day. You can almost think of the ticket price as a loss leader. Once they get you into the ship, they have a multitude of ways to extract money from you as a captive customer. Thus far, we've talked about the operating costs of the cruise ship, but what about the upfront capital expenditure? Carnival currently has 92 ships of varying sizes. The average ship costs them $600 million to build and has capacity for 2,800 passengers. That comes out to a little over $200,000 per sea. So how long will it take them to recoup this investment? In general, cruise ships operate at very high capacity utilization. The cost of each voyage is largely fixed because the staff are already under contract and the food has already been ordered. Because cruise ships are mobile, they can be moved around the world to match wherever demand is seasonally the highest. If a voyage is underbooked, the cruise line will start lowering the prices to entice price-conscious passengers. Cruise ships are disproportionately filled with older people, many of whom are retired. If the price is low enough, there will almost always be enough retired people to fill up the ship, regardless of the time of year. For most cruise lines, the capacity utilization is almost always at or near 100%. In fact, it's sometimes greater than 100%, as families pack their kids into their room. At $80 of profit per passenger per day, that's $29,000 of profit per year. The cost of the cruise ship is $200,000 per sea. Thus, the payback period is 7 years. The estimated useful life of a typical cruise ship is 30 years, so it can generate profits of 4 times its cost. Now let's turn our attention to hotels. The average price of a hotel room in the US is $170 per night, and the average hotel offers far fewer amenities than a cruise ship. They don't need fuel, their staffs are much smaller, and most of them don't even offer free food. So why are they so expensive? Let's look at the example of Host Hotels and Resorts. With a market capitalization of $14 billion, they are one of the largest REITs in the US. While they own 77 hotels, you probably never heard their name. This is because all of their hotels are franchised from brands including Marriott, Hyatt, or Hilton. A guest checks into the Marriott hotel. They probably don't even know that it's owned by Host. The business model of hotels is conceptually similar to cruise ships. Host operates luxury hotels, so the average cost is $300 per night per room. They also generate $147 from food and beverage sales. Because it's a luxury hotel, the restaurant is very expensive. Finally, they make $45 from other revenue sources. This includes golf courses and spas they have at some of their locations. In total, they generate almost $500 per night when a room is occupied. Room service costs them $73 per night. This is much more expensive than what cruises pay. There are 2 reasons for this. Firstly, they're a luxury hotel, so their room service standards are higher. But importantly, because the hotel is physically located in the US, they are not able to hire workers from developing countries, so the hotel staff are paid much more. Their cost of food and beverage is also much higher at $97 per night. Their food is higher quality, and the hotel kitchen lacks the economies of scale that a cruise ship enjoys. They have $119 of developmental and support costs. This includes administrative expenses like the hotel managers, front desk staff, people who work at the spas, repairs, and utilities. Again, the salaries are much higher than what cruise lines pay for similar workers. $23 goes to franchise fees to Marriott, Hyatt, and Hilton. This is the cost of using their brand and gaining access to their customer rewards programs. $36 goes to property level expenses, which is mostly property tax. Because the hotels are located in large metropolitan areas, the real estate values are very high. This begets commensurately high property taxes. That's a big benefit of a cruise ship. The ocean doesn't charge any property taxes. Finally, $25 goes to maintenance and repairs. This leaves the hotel with $120 of profit per night for an occupied room. This seems pretty good. It's much higher than the $80 of profit per night that Carnival makes. However, we also need to consider the cost of capital. Unlike cruise ships, hotel buildings can't be moved around the world to where seasonal demand is the highest. Because of this, occupancy rates are much lower. In 2023, host hotels and resorts had average occupancy of 70%, which is in line with the rest of the industry. Also, you might think that the cruise ships would be much more expensive to build than hotels. This is not the case. Just like there are economies of scale in operating cruise ships, there are also economies of scale in building them. For example, the cabins are standardized and prefabricated in a factory. Cranes are used to insert them into the side of the ship. This is an extremely efficient way to build. Additionally, to build a hotel you need land. It needs to be located in desirable locations, which means the land is expensive. In the case of host hotels and resorts, they spent $19 billion to buy 77 hotels with 42,000 rooms. This comes out to $450,000 per room. At $120 of profit per night and 70% occupancy, they generate $30,000 of profit per year per room. This is a 15-year payback period, more than double the payback period of the cruise ship. In conclusion, cruise lines can be far more profitable than hotels, despite offering cheaper prices to consumers. This is thanks to high occupancy, economies of scale, cheap labor, the lack of real estate expense, and ancillary revenue. Now let's look at the example from the beginning of the video of the $33 per night cruise. If every ticket costs $33, the cruise line would certainly lose money. So why do they offer this bargain at all? As we discussed earlier, cruise lines move their ships around throughout the year to go to the places with the highest seasonal demand. The two biggest markets are the US and Europe. Typically, people want to come back to their original destination. If you departed from Florida, you probably want to go back to Florida. This way, you can buy a return airline ticket to fly back home. Also, most passengers want to do shore excursions. Being able to see many different countries is one of the main selling points. If seasonal demand in the US is greater than Europe or vice versa, the ship needs to make a one-way trip across the Atlantic. These are the least desirable voyages, because you end up halfway across the world from where you began. It's also a very boring trip because you never make any stops. The cruise lines offer extreme bargains on these undesirable voyages, because some revenue is better than none. So if you don't care about shore excursions and you're willing to end up on the other side of the world, this is how you can get a $33 per day cruise. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about the cruise line industry? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.